Hey everyone, it's Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? I had a very profound, prolific aha validation from Spirit today. Very, 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 very profound. Very profound. But my work still goes on. I had to do some research. Also, before I begin, because I'm going to tell you exactly what's on the menu for tonight. A very nice person finally got this. Finally. I love reading books, and I have been looking for this, and someone sent it to me. So I thank them very much. So more research and fun with the grays. Still working on that. It's a lot because there's not just one species. There's lots. And then you have to find the ones that infiltrated the United States and the world. And why I say the United States is because of the Grenada Treaty that Eisenhower didn't sign. So I also have to tap in a little bit into one of Elena Danon's books that I didn't get to read yet because I'm swamped with books right now. But for that, I'm still researching. I'm putting a lot together. So hang in there for those of you who are waiting for that. I'm going to continue with Carlos Castaneda. And the reason why this I want to get through this book is because it's very important, the messages that people are receiving and picking up from his writing, and comparing their dark night of the soul, them going within themselves and looking at the aspects that you don't want to look at and you don't want to admit to them. We're human. We are not perfect. We have vices. We are and have been wiped clean for the most part, our memories. So when we come into the earth, we really don't know. For the most part, some of us do, and some of us don't, but the vast majority of people don't know who they were before coming here. And many people have led plethora of thousands of lives throughout the course of Earth history. So it's not easy to confront the things that are within ourselves that are not pretty. But this gives us an opportunity to confront those things once you are conscious of them, and to heal and to forgive yourself, because it's human experience. This is how you go through life, experiencing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And everybody has a role to play. So just know that. I'm going to get started in a minute. Before I begin this beautiful, I don't know where we are at, but I know where we're at because I put a little sticky there. I don't know what chapter. It doesn't really have chapters. If you resonate with my work, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. I try to get something out every day, whether it be an oracle reading or a book reading. Because of today's, Allison had downloads and spirit validations all day. I had him investigate. So yeah, I didn't get to do much, and I'm also still watching my neighbor's dog, and I didn't get to sleep last night. So, yeah. I'm also in the middle of reading The Law of One. I mean, I've been reading The Law of One, but I focused on it last night. I might pull some stuff up from there and do another reading from that, but I will eventually, Your Ranch is next. And then I'll swap to a Wasp Bay, and Convoluted Universe is starting to peak again for me. So watch out for those. And we're going to get started. The Unavoidable Appointment. There was something that kept nagging at me in the back of my mind. I had to answer a most important letter I'd received, and I had to do it at any cost. What had prevented me from doing it was a mixture of indolence and a deep desire to please. My anthropologist friend, who was responsible for my meeting Don Juan Matias, had written me a letter a couple of months earlier. He wanted to know how I was doing in my studies of anthropology and urged me to pay him a visit. I composed 3 long letters. On rereading each of them, I found them so trite. Okay, I can pronounce this word. I don't know if I can pronounce it with my teeth. Obescuous. No. It's okay. That I tore them up. I couldn't express them the depth of my gratitude, the depth of my feelings for him. I rationalized my delay in answering with a genuine resolve to go to see him and tell him personally what I was doing with Don Juan Matias. But I kept postponing my imminent trip because I wasn't sure what it was that I was doing with Don Juan. I wanted someday to show my friend real results. As it was, I only vague sketches and possibilities, which in his demanding eyes wouldn't have been anthropological fieldwork anyway. One day I found out that he had died. His death brought to me one of those dangers of silent depressions. I had no way to express what I felt because what I was feeling was not fully formulated in my mind. It was a mixture of dejection, despondency, and abhorrence at myself for not having answered his letter, for not having gone to see him. I paid a visit to Don Juan Matias soon after that. On arriving at his house, I sat down on one of the crates under his rambala and tried to search for words that would not sound banal to express my sense of dejection over the death of my friend. For reasons incomprehensible to me, Don Juan knew the origin of my turmoil and the overt reason for my visit to him. Yes, Don Juan said dryly, I know that your friend, the anthropologist who guided you to meet me, has died. For whatever reasons, I knew exactly the moment he died. I saw it. I'm going to put a pause on that for a second. I have this crazy ability. When I'm around people long enough, I could sense their death or if they're in the dying state. I did for both my parents, and as a child, I predicted when they were going to die. I wasn't too far off from either one of them. I think death it's a beautiful thing, nothing to fear. It's beautiful, but in a human body without the understanding and the knowing of where you're going to go next, it's not an easy concept for the majority of the people. But I can relate to that very deep, very, very deeply. His statements jolted me to my foundations. I saw it coming a long time ago. I even told you about it, but you disregarded what I said. I'm sure that you don't even remember it. I remembered every word he had said, but it had no meaning for me at the time he said it. Don Juan had stated that an event deeply related to our meeting, but not part of it, was the fact that he had seen my anthropologist friend as a dying man. I saw death as an outside force already opening your friend, he said to me. Every one of us has an energetic fissure, an energetic crack below the navel. The crack, which sorcerers call the gap, is closed when a man is in his prime. He had said that normally all that is discernible to the sorcerer's eye is a tenacious discoloration in the otherwise whitish glow of a luminous sphere. But when a man is close to dying, the gap becomes quite apparent. He had assured me that my friend's gap was wide open. What is the significance of this, Don Juan? I asked perfunctively. The significance is a deadly one, he had replied. The spirit was signaling to me that something was coming to an end. I thought it was my life that was coming to an end, and I accepted it graciously as I could. It dawned on me much, much later that it wasn't my life that was coming to an end, but my entire lineage. I didn't know what he was talking about, but how could I have taken all that seriously? As far as I was concerned, it was at the time he said it, like everything else in my life, just talk. Your friend himself told you, though not in so many words, that he was dying, Don Juan said. You acknowledged what he was saying the way you acknowledged what I said, but in both cases you chose to bypass it. I had no comments to make. I was overwhelmed by what he was saying. I wanted to sink into the crate I was sitting on, to disappear, swallowed up by the earth. It's not your fault that you bypass things like this, he went on. It's youth. You have so many things to do, so many people around you. You're not alert. You never learn to be alert anyway. In the vein of defending the last bastion of myself, my idea that I was watchful, I pointed out to Don Juan that I had been in life and death situations that required my quick wit and vigilance. It wasn't that I lacked the capacity to be alert, but that I lacked the orientation for setting an appropriate list of priorities. Therefore, everything was either important or unimportant to me. To be alert doesn't mean to be watchful, Don Juan said. For sorcerers, to be alert means to be aware of the fabric of the everyday world that seems erroneous to the interaction of the moment. On the trip that you took with your friend before you met me, you noticed only the details that were obvious. You didn't notice how his death was absorbing him, and yet something in you knew it. I began to protest, to tell him that what he was saying wasn't true. Don't hide yourself behind banalities, he said in an accusing tone. Stand up. If only for the moment you are with me, assume responsibility for what you know. Don't get lost in the extraneous fabric of the world around you. Extraneous to what's going on. If you hadn't been so concerned with yourself and your problems, you would have known that that was his last trip. You would have noticed that he was closing his accounts, seeing the people who helped him, saying goodbye to them. Your anthropologist friend talked to me once, Don Juan went on. I remembered him so clearly that I wasn't surprised at all that he brought you to me at the bus depot. I couldn't help him when he talked to me. He wasn't the man I was looking for, but I wished him well for my sorcerer's emptiness, for my sorcerer's silence. For this reason, I know that on his last trip, he was saying thank you to the people who counted in his life. I admitted to Don Juan that he was very right, that there had been so many details that I had been aware of, but that they hadn't meant a thing to me at the time, since, such as, for instance, my friend's ecstasy in watching the scenery around us. He would stop the car just to watch for hours on end, the mountains in the distance, or the riverbed, or the desert. I discarded this as the idiotic sentimentality of a middle-aged man. I even made vague hints to him that perhaps he was drinking too much. He told me that in dire cases, a drink would allow a man a moment of peace and detachment, a long moment enough to savor everything unrepeatable. That was, for a fact, the trip for his eyes only, Don Juan said. Sorcerers take such a trip, and in it, nothing counts except what their eyes can absorb. Your friend was unburdening himself of everything superfluous. I confessed to Don Juan that I had disregarded what he had said to me about my dying friend, because at an unknown level, I had known that it was true. Sorcerers never say things idly, he said. I am most careful about what I say to you or to anybody else. The difference between you and me is that I don't have any time at all, and I act accordingly. You, on the other hand, believe that you have all the time in the world, and you act accordingly. The end result of our individual behaviors is that I measure everything I do and say, and you don't. I conceded that he was right, but I assured him that whatever he was saying did not alleviate my turmoil or my sadness. I blurted out then uncontrollably every nuance of my confused feelings. I told him that I wasn't in search of advice. I wanted him to prescribe a sorcerer's way to end my anguish. I believed I was really interested in getting from him some natural relaxant, an organic value. And I said to him, Don Juan shook his head in bewilderment. You are too much, he said. Next, you're going to ask for a sorcerer's medication to remove everything annoying from you, with no effort at all on your part, just the effort of swallowing whatever is given. The more awful the taste, the better the results. That's your Westerner's man's motto. You want results. One potion and you're cured. Sorcerers face things in a different way, Don Juan continued. Since they don't have any time to spare, they give themselves fully to what's in front of them. Your turmoil is the result of your lack of sobriety. You didn't have the sobriety to thank your friend properly. That happens to every one of us. We never express what we feel, and when we want to, it's too late. Because we have run out of time. It's not only your friend who ran out of time. You too ran out of it. You should have thanked him profusely in Arizona. He took the trouble to take you around, and whether you understand it or not, in the bus depot, he gave you his best shot. But the moment when you should have thanked him, you were angry with him. You were judging him. You were nasty. He was nasty to you, whatever. And then you postponed seeing him. In reality, what did was to postpone thanking him. Now you're stuck with a ghost on your tail. You'll never be able to pay what you owe him. I understood that immensely of what he was saying. Never had I faced my actions in such a light. In fact, I had never thanked anyone ever. Don Juan pushed his barb even deeper. That, my friends, is a major lesson you all need to learn, if you haven't done so already. Your friend knew that he was dying, he said. He wrote you one final letter to find out about your doings. Perhaps unbeknownst to him or to you, you were his last thought. The weight of Don Juan's words was too much for my shoulders. I collapsed. I felt that I had to lie down. My head was spinning. Maybe it was the setting. I had made the terrible mistake of arriving at Don Juan's house in the late afternoon. The setting sun seemed astoundingly golden, and the reflections on the bare mountains to the east of Don Juan's house were gold and purple. The sky didn't have a speck of a cloud. Nothing seemed to move. It was as if a whole world was hiding, but its presence was overpowering. The quietness of the Sonora Desert was like a dagger. It went to the marrow of my bones. I wanted to leave, to get my car and drive away. I wanted to be in the city, get lost in the noise. You are having a taste of infinity, Don once said with grave finality. I know it because I've been in your shoes. You want to run away, to plunge into something human, warm, contradictory, stupid, who cares? You want to forget the death of your friend, but infinity won't let you. His voice mellowed. It has gripped you in its merciless clutches. What can I do now, Don Juan? I asked. The only thing you can do, Don Juan said, is to keep the memory of your friend fresh, to keep it alive for the rest of your life, and perhaps even beyond. Sorcerers express in this fashion the things they can no longer voice. You may think it is a silly way, but that's the best sorcerers can do. It was my own sadness, doubtlessness, which made me believe that the jubilant Don Juan was as sad as I. I discarded the thought immediately. That couldn't be possible. Sadness for sorcerers is not personal, Don Juan said again, erupting into my thoughts. It is not quite sadness. It's a wave of energy that comes from the depths of the cosmos and hits sorcerers when they are receptive, when they are like radios capable of catching radio waves. The sorcerers of old times, who gave us the entire format of sorcery, believe that there is sadness in the universe as a force, a condition, like light, like intent, and that this perennial force acts especially on sorcerers because they no longer have any defensive shields. They cannot hide behind their friends or their studies. They cannot hide behind love or hatred or happiness or misery. They cannot hide behind anything. The condition of sorcerers, Don Juan went on, is that sadness for them is abstract. It doesn't come from coveting or lacking something or from self-importance. It doesn't come from me. It comes from infinity. The sadness you feel is not thinking your friend is already leaning in that direction. My teacher, the Nagual Julian, he went on, was a fabulous actor. He actually worked professionally in the theater. He had a favorite story that he used to tell in his theater sessions. He used to push me into terrible outbursts of anguish with it. He said it was a story for warriors who had everything and yet felt the sting of the universal sadness. I always thought he was telling it for me personally. That's heavy. And I want to bring this up because I think it's very important. I know we're reading this as, the dark night of the soul, reaching infinity, and finding out a lot of awesome, fun toy facts. But at the end of the day, the last 2 years especially, a lot of people have lost loved ones that they couldn't say goodbye to because of the crimes against humanity makes me really, really angry. Really angry. Beyond. And I'm in all seriousness, There are too many people that were in the hospital that couldn't have their loved ones next to them to say goodbye or to give last words. They didn't have the telephone because all the nurses were overwhelmed. And too many people live with this guilt that they didn't get their final goodbye. Although this is teaching us a lesson, okay, human guilt, I don't want anybody that is watching this video, it is timeless, to have that guilt. Because you can talk to them at any moment, at any time, just by thinking them. In all seriousness, you are energy, you're immortal. Your family member, your friend, whoever passed away, and you didn't get to say that goodbye, stop feeling guilty over it. And talk to them. Write them a letter. They're always with you. You call upon them, they're with you. I'm serious. If I think about my father right now, Dad, no, he'll make me cry and then I won't get back to the book. But if I call on my parents, they're with me. And I could talk to them. No, can they respond? No. For me, I can get a sign or get a feeling that I know what's going on. I get like the knowing. But a lot of people don't have that. So I'm telling you right off the bat, please, after the last 3 years, here we are, 3 years, okay, please do not feel guilty. It is something that was out of your control, okay? Outside of, we're not talking about the book right now, okay? I'm talking about real deal. People were in the hospital, shit hit the fan, and there was no way for you to say goodbye. Don't worry about that. They're with you. Call upon them. There's so many people I give spiritual advice to on a constant basis. Some people don't feel comfortable verbalizing it out loud, their feelings, whether it be positive or negative. If you had a shitty person in your life, whether it be a parent or a family member, especially, who did not treat you properly or left your life, whatever the scenario is that is not of a good, that's still somebody that was your parent or a blood relative or somebody that adopted you or whatever have your situation. It's infinite, right? You could still call them and talk to them. Write them a letter about all the pain they might have caused you. Anything. You can write a 10-page letter, you can write a book. Write it down, get it out. They're with you, reading it as you are writing it. And I can bet you, eventually one day, they're going to send you a sign, a memory. They're going to come to you in a dream. Whatever their signs are for you, they will come to you at any of those times that you're thinking about them. Days later, you'll see a penny on the floor. You'll see, a lot of people see, I see my parents as cardinals. My grandmother was a butterfly that hatched in my pre-K classroom and didn't want to get off my finger. And then the meeting was like, do you know your grandma was like chilling on your hand, right? What? No way. Checking in on me. Signs come in the most unexpected ways when it's meant for you to see it. All you need to do is be more aware that the signs are happening. It is so important. It gets me emotional because there's so many people out there that had this the last 3 years of this collective guilt that didn't get to say their goodbyes. they didn't get to see the person in their last moments. It's hard, but that's not for you to be blamed on. That's for the animals, and they're gonna come to their judgment. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, there is a lot of good people in the medical field. One of my really good friends from high school saved my mother's life. She bought my mother time. And it allowed me, and it allowed my aunt and her cousin to say their final goodbyes and have time with my mother. And then she passed. But if it wasn't for my friend intervening in such an angelic way, it would have been bonkers. But it taught me how to be by myself and how to pull my bootstraps up and how to deal with junk by myself. And it was only with 2 weeks span of time. She went in the hospital like around Thanksgiving. And by the end of December, I'm telling you, I got to cross my mother over. I didn't get to cross my father over, but I had that moment with my father, and that was enough. I wasn't around for my birth mother, and a lot of my friends, you know, unfortunately, I wasn't there for them, but I talk to them, and they're around me when I need them. But please, it's something that is very hard to let go of. It's guilt is not easy to heal. That type of guilt is not easy to heal. But you need to understand that you've got to get it out. Whether you're cursing these people out or sending them your love and thanking them for all the memorable times, and actually bringing that, writing it down, getting it out, talking about all the good times and savoring moments and memories that you had with them is more important. And that helps you heal. So that's some advice that I'm willing to impart for those of you who have lost a loved one and never had said goodbye. And especially in the last 3 years, where a lot of people died by themselves in the hospital. And that's a guilt also that's really hard to swallow. But no, you can call them at any time. They're with you. They really are. And I want you all to find solace in that, even if it wasn't a good relationship. I'm going to tell you right now, my father and I never got along. My adoptive father that passed away and I did not get along. Not at all. He didn't get me. He never understood me. When I was a baby, he was 37. And not to say that like that's my age around now, but the generational gap and the difference of his upbringing, he wasn't prepared to be a father. I don't, you know, I now know that's why he didn't know how to do anything with me and handle me and interact with me. We had our really good moments, but the majority of them were fights and back and forth, and it was a struggle. When I got to see the first medium, once I told him how he passed, the next thing he said, "I love you." He's with me now. And he apologized. And he's my guardian. He puts things in my path to help me out. He's been helping me. He's my guardian. My mother, on the other hand, She's with my star family, doing a lot of good work for the planet. But as an energy being, you're omnipresent. You could be in multiple places at once. So please know that they forgive you for your actions and they love you. That's where they go. They go in up in density and they heal, and then they understand what they did wrong to you. Okay? They heal, and then they come to the understanding that they hurt you. And then they try to make it up in whatever way that they can on the other side. You just have the eyes to see it. So I'm sorry I'm ranting, but it's a message that I think everybody needs to hear, because too many people went through a lot of anguish in the last 3 years with this tyrannical communistic bullshit that didn't need to fucking happen. I don't care what side of the coin, again, don't care what side of the coin you're on. I'm not being insensitive. I'm going to tell you what, when you find out the truth, and it's coming out, and it's been coming out, so stop ignoring it. A lot of people died. A lot of people got murdered. That. Okay. A lot of people, okay, passed away. They were murdered. And there was a lot of people who turned a blind eye to it, and a lot of people walked away from their profession, and everybody has their own set of circumstances. I'm not judging on that. But just know you can talk to them, and it was their time to go. So please know that we all have a time to go. It's, in a sense, predestined. We still have free will. Things do happen. But for the most part, a lot of things are already determined for us. And it's okay. Write your letter, talk it out. That's going to help you heal. Okay, they want you to heal. They don't want you to be sad and upset and feeling the way you do, because it's not healthy, and it spreads disease inside of you. Let it go. Write it down. Burn the letter at the end to the universe. Put your hand on a tree. Give that energy out to the earth so it can transmute it. But understand, it's okay, and you're going to be okay. And when you go through that process, like our friend here, of acknowledging that and seeing it, you're going to heal it, and you're going to get better for it. I'm going to get back into the book. Don Juan then paraphrased his teacher, telling me that the story referred to a man suffering from a profound melancholy. He went to see the best doctors of his day, and every one of those doctors failed to help him. He finally came to the office of a leading doctor, a healer of the soul. The doctor suggested to his patient that perhaps he could find solace and the end of his melancholy in love. The man responded that love was no problem for him, that he was loved perhaps like no one else in the world. The doctor's next suggestion was that maybe the patient should undertake a voyage and see other parts of the world. The man responded that without exaggeration, he had been in every corner of the world. The doctor recommended hobbies like the arts, sports, etc. The man responded to every one of his recommendations in the same terms. He had done that and had no relief. The doctor suspected that the man was possibly an incurable liar. He couldn't have done all those things as he claimed, but being a good healer, the doctor had a final insight. "Ah," he exclaimed, "I have the perfect solution for you, sir. You must attend a performance of the greatest comedian of our day. He was delighted. He will delight you to the point where you will forget every twist of your melancholy. You must attend a performance of the great Garrick." Don Juan said that the man looked at the doctor with the saddest look you can imagine. He said, "Doctor, if that's your recommendation, I am a lost man. I have no cure. I am the great Garrick." The breaking point. Don Juan defined inner silence as a peculiar I cannot wait until this RV and all this goody stuff coming our way. I can get teeth and everything called, like, I could pronounce things properly. Peculiar. Okay, you know what I'm saying. State of being in which thoughts were canceled out and one could function from a level other than that of daily awareness. He stressed that inner silence meant the suspension of internal dialogue, the perennial companion of thoughts, perennial thoughts, and was therefore a state of profound quietude. The old sorcerers, Don Juan said, call it inner silence because it is a state in which perception does not depend on the senses. What is at work during inner silence is another faculty that man has, the faculty that makes him a magical being, the very faculty that has been curtailed, not by man himself, but by some extraneous influence. Extraneous. What is the extraneous influence that curtails the magical faculty of man, I asked. That is the topic for a future explanation, Don Juan replied, not the subject of our present discussion. Even though it is indeed the most serious aspect of the sorcery of the shamans of ancient Mexico. Inner silence, he continued, is the stand from which everything stems in sorcery. In other words, everything we do leads to the stand, which, like everything else in the world of sorcerers, doesn't reveal itself unless something gigantic shakes us. Don Juan said that the sorcerers of ancient Mexico devised endless ways to shake themselves or other sorcery practitioners at their foundations in order to reach that coveted state of inner silence. They considered the most far-fetched acts, which may seem totally unrelated to the pursuit of inner silence, which, as for instance, jumping into waterfalls or spending nights hanging upside down from the top branch of a tree, to be the key points that brought into being. Following the rationales of the sorcerers of ancient Mexico, Don Juan stated categorically that inner silence was accumulated. In my case, he struggled to guide me to construct a core of inner silence in myself, and then added to it second by second on every occasion I practiced it. He explained that the sorcerers of ancient Mexico discovered that each individual had a different threshold of inner silence in terms of time, meaning that inner silence must be kept by each one of us for the length of time of our specific threshold before it can work. What did those sorcerers consider the sign that inner silence is working, Don Juan? I asked. Inner silence works for the moment you begin to occur it, he replied. What the old sorcerers were after was the final dramatic end result of reaching that individual threshold of silence. Some very talented practitioners needed only a few minutes of silence to reach the coveted goal. Others, less talented, needed longer periods of silence, perhaps more than 1 hour of complete quietude before they reached the desired result. The desired result is what the old sorcerers called stopping the world. The moment when everything around us ceases to be what it's always been. This is the moment when sorcerers return to the true nature of man. Don Juan went on. The old sorcerers also called it total freedom. It is the moment when man, the slave, becomes man, the free, being capable of feats of perception that defy our linear imagination. Don Juan assured me that inner silence is the avenue that leads to a true suspension of judgment, to a moment when sensory data emanating from the universe at large ceases to be interrupted by the senses, a moment when cognition ceases to be the force which, through usage and repetition, decides the nature of the world. Sorcerers need a breaking point for the workings of inner silence to set in, Don Juan said. The breaking point is like the mortar that a mason puts between bricks. It's only when the mortar hardens that the loose bricks become a structure. From the beginning of our association, Don Juan had drilled into me the value, the necessity of inner silence. I did my best to follow his suggestions by accumulating inner silence second by second. I had no means to measure the effect of this accumulation, nor did I have any means to judge whether or not I had reached any threshold. I simply aimed doggedly at acquiring it, not just to please Don Juan, but because the act of accumulating it had become a challenge in itself. One day, Don Juan and I were taking a leisurely stroll in the main plaza of Hermoso. It was early afternoon of a cloudy day. The heat was dry and actually very pleasant. There were lots of people walking around. There were stores around the plaza. I had been to Hermoso many times, and yet I had never noticed the stores. I knew that they were there, but their presence was not something I had been consciously aware of. I couldn't have made a map of the plaza if my life depended upon it. That day, as I walked with Don Juan, I was trying to locate and identify stores. As I searched for something to use as a mnemonic device that would stir my recollection for later use. As I have told you before many times, Don Juan said, jolting me out of my concentration, every sorcerer I know, male or female, sooner or later arrives at a breaking point in their lives. Do you mean that they have a mental breakdown or something like that? I asked. No, he said, laughing. Mental breakdowns are for persons who indulge in themselves. Sorcerers are not persons. What I mean is that at a given moment, the continuity of their lives has to break in order for inner silence to set in and become an active part of their structures. It's very, very important, Don Juan went on, that you yourself deliberately arrive at the breaking point, or that you create it artificially and intelligently. What do you mean by that, Don Juan? I asked, caught in his intriguing reasoning. Your breaking point, he said, is to disconnect your life as you know it. You have done everything I told you, dutifully and accurately. If you are talented, you'll never show it. It seems to be your style. You're not slow. but you act as if you were. You're very sure of yourself, but you act as if you were insecure. You're not timid, and yet you act as if you were afraid of people. Everything you do points at one single spot. You need to break all that ruthlessly. But in what way, Don Juan? What do I have in mind? I asked, genuinely frantic. I think everything boils down to one act, he said. You must leave your friends. You must say goodbye to them for good. It's not possible for you to continue on the warrior's path, carrying your personal history with you. And unless you discontinue your way of life, I won't be able to go ahead with my instruction. Now, Don Juan, I said, I have to put my foot down. You're asking too much of me. To be frank with you, I don't think I can do it. My friends are my family, my points of reference. Precisely, he remarked. They are your points of reference. Therefore, they have to go. Sorcerers have only one point of reference, infinity. But how do you want me to proceed, Don Juan? I asked in a plaintive voice. His request was driving me up the wall. You must simply leave, he said matter-of-factly. Leave any way you can. But where will I go? I asked. My recommendation is that you rent a room in one of those chintzy hotels, you know, he said. The uglier the place, the better. If the room has drab green carpet and drab green drapes and drab green walls, so much the better. A place comparable to that hotel I showed you in Los Angeles. I laughed nervously at my recollection of time when I was driving with Don Juan through the industrial site of Los Angeles, where there were only warehouses and dilapidated hotels for transients. One hotel in particular attracted Don Juan's attention because of its bombastic name, Edward VII. We stopped across the street for a moment to look at it. The hotel over there, Don Juan said, pointing at it, is to me the true representation of life on earth for the average person. If you're lucky or ruthless, you will get a room with a view of the street, where you will see the endless parade of human misery. If you're not that lucky or that ruthless, you will get a room on the inside, with windows to the wall of the next building. Think of spending a lifetime torn between those two views. Envying the view of the street if you were inside, and envying the view of the wall if you were on the outside, tired of looking out. Don Juan's metaphor bothered me to no end, for I had taken it all in. Now faced with the possibility of having to rent a room in a hotel comparable to the Edward VII, I didn't know what to say or which way to go. What do you want me to do there, Don Juan? I asked. A sorcerer uses a place like that to die, he said, looking at me with an unblinking stare. You have never been alone in your life. This is the time to do it. You will stay in the room until you die. His request scared me, but at the same time, it made me laugh. Not that I'm going to do it, Don Juan, I said, but what would be the criteria to know that I'm dead? Unless you want me to actually die physically. Here's Nosy Head. Miss Nosy Nosy. No, he said. I don't want your body to die physically. I want your person to die. The two are very different affairs. In essence, your person has very little to do with your body. Your person is your mind. And believe you me, your mind is not yours. What is this nonsense, Don Juan, that my mind is not mine? I heard myself asking with a nervous twang in my voice. I'll tell you about the subject someday, he said. but not while you're cushioned by your friends. The criteria that indicates that a sorcerer is dead, he went on, is when it makes no difference to him whether he has company or whether he's alone. The day you don't covet the company, your friends, whom you use as shields, that's the day your person has died. What do you say? Are you game? Can't do it, Don Juan, I said. It's useless that I try to lie to you. I can't leave my friends. It's perfectly all right, he said, unperturbed. My statement didn't seem to affect him in the least. I won't be able to talk to you anymore, but let's say that during our time together, you have learned a great deal. You have learned things that will make you very strong, regardless of whether you come back or you stay away. He patted me on the back and said goodbye to me. He turned around and simply disappeared among the people in the plaza, as if he had merged with them. For an instant, I had the strange sensation that the people in the plaza were like a curtain that he had opened and then disappeared behind. The end had come, as did everything else in Don Juan's world, swiftly and unpredictably. Suddenly, it was on me. I was in the throes of it, and I didn't even know how I had gotten into it. I should have been crushed, yet I wasn't. I didn't know why I was elated. I marveled at the faculty with which everything had ended. Don was indeed an elegant being. There were no recriminations or anger or anything of the sort at all. I got in my car and drove, happy as a lark. I was jubilant. How extraordinary that everything had ended so swiftly, I thought, so painlessly. My trip home was uneventful. In Los Angeles, being in my familiar surroundings, I noticed that I had derived an enormous amount of energy from my last exchange with Don Juan. I was actually very happy, very relaxed, and I resumed what I considered to be my normal life with renewed zest. All my tribulations with my friends and my realizations about them, everything I had said to Don Juan in reference to this, were thoroughly forgotten. It was as if something had erased all that from my mind. I had marveled a couple of times at the faculty I had in forgetting something that had been so meaningful and in forgetting it so thoroughly. Everything was as expected. There was one single inconsistency in the otherwise near paradigm of my new old life. I distinctly remember Don Juan saying to me that my departing from the sorcerer's world was purely academic and that I would be back. I had remembered and written down every word of our exchange. According to my normal linear reasoning and memory, Don Juan had never made those statements. How could I have remembered things that had never taken place? I pondered uselessly. My pseudo recollection was strange enough to make a case for it, but then I decided that there was no point to it. As far as I was concerned, I was out of Don Juan's milieu. Interesting. Following Don Juan suggested in reference to my behavior with those who had favored me in any way, I had come to an earth-shaking decision for me, that of honoring and saying thank you to my friends before it was too late. One case in point was my friend Rodrigo Cummings. One incident involving my friend Rodrigo, however, toppled my new paradigm and sent me tumbling down into total destruction. My attitude toward him changed radically when I vanished my competitiveness with him. I found out that it was the easiest thing in the world for me to project 100% into whatever Rodrigo did. In fact, I was exactly like him, but I didn't know it until I stopped competing with him. Then the truth emerged for me with maddening vividness. One of Rodrigo's foremost wishes was to finish college. Every semester, he registered for school and took as many courses as was permitted. Then, as the semester progressed, he dropped them one by one. Sometimes he would withdraw from school altogether. At other times, he would keep one 3-unit course all the way through to the bitter end. During his last semester, he kept a course in sociology because he liked it. The final exam was approaching. He told me that he had 3 weeks to study, to read the textbook for the course. He thought that was an exorbitant amount of time to read nearly 600 pages. He considered himself something of a speed reader, with a high level of retention in his opinion. He had nearly 100% photographic memory. He thought he had a great deal of time before the exam, so he asked me if I would help him recondition his car for his paper route. He wanted to take the right door off in order to throw the paper through that opening with his right hand instead of over the roof with his left. I pointed out to him that he was left-handed, to which he retorted that among his many abilities, which none of his friends noticed, was that of being ambidextrous. He was right about that. I had never noticed it myself. After I helped him take the door off, he decided to rip out the roof lining, which was badly torn. He said that his car was in optimum mechanical condition and he would take it to Tijuana, Mexico, which, as a good Aguino of the day, he called TJ to have it relined for a few bucks. We could use a trip, he said with glee. He even selected friends he would like to take. In TJ, I'm sure that you'll go to look for used books because you're an asshole. The rest of us will go to the bordello. I know quite a few. It took us a week to rip out all the lining and sand the metal surface to prepare it for new lining. Rodrigo had 2 weeks left to study then. He considered that to be too much time. He engaged me then in helping him paint his apartment and redo the floors. It took us over a week to paint and sand the hardwood floors. He didn't want to paint over the wallpaper in one room. He had to rent a machine that removes wallpaper by applying steam to it. Naturally, neither Rodrigo nor I knew how to use the machine properly, and we botched the job horrendously. We ended up having to use topping, a very fine mixture of plaster of Paris and other substances that gave a wall a smooth surface. After all these endeavors, Rodrigo ended up having only 2 days left to cram 600 pages into his head. He went frantically into an all-day, all-night reading marathon with the help of amphetamines. Rodrigo did go to school the day of the exam and did sit down at his desk and did get the multiple choice exam sheet. What he didn't do was stay awake to take the exam. His body slumped forward and his head hit the desk with a terrifying thud. The exam had to be suspended for a while. The sociology teacher became hysterical, and so did the students sitting around Rodrigo. His body was stiff and icy cold. The whole class suspected the worst. They thought he had died of a heart attack. Paramedics were summoned to remove him. After a cursory examination, they pronounced Rodrigo profoundly asleep and took him to the hospital to sleep the effect of the amphetamines off. My projection into Rodrigo Cummings was a total that it frightened me. I was exactly like him. The similarity between unattainable to me. In an act of what I consider to be total suicide nihilism, I rented a room in a dilapidated hotel in Hollywood. The carpets were green and had terrible cigarette burns that had obviously been snuffed out before they turned into a full-fledged fire. It had green drapes and drab green walls. The blinking sign of the hotel shone all night through the window. I ended up doing exactly what Don Juan had requested, but in a roundabout way. I didn't do it to fulfill any of Don Juan's requirements or with the intention of patching up our differences. I did stay in that hotel for months on end until my person, like Don Juan had proposed, died, until it truthfully made no difference to me whether I had company or I was alone. After leaving the hotel, I went to live alone, closer to school. I continued my studies of anthropology, which had never been interrupted, and I started a very profitable business with a lady partner. Everything seemed perfectly in order until one day when the realization hit me like a kick in the head that I was going to spend the rest of my life worrying about my business or worrying about the phantom choice between being an academic, a businessman, or worrying about my partner's foibles of shenanigans. True desperation pierced the depths of my being. For the first time in my life, desperate all the things that I had done and seen, I had no way out. I was completely lost. I seriously began to toy with the idea of the most pragmatic and painless way to end my days. One morning, a loud, insistent knocking woke me up. I thought it was the landlady, and I was sure that if I didn't answer, she would enter with her passkey. I opened the door, and there was Don Juan. I was so surprised that I was numb. I stammered and stuttered, incapable of saying a word. I wanted to kiss his hand, to kneel in front of him. Don Juan came in and sat down with great ease on the edge of my bed. I made the trip to Los Angeles, he said, just to see you. I wanted to take him to breakfast, but he said that he had other things to attend to and that he had only a moment to talk to me. I hurried and told him about my experience in the hotel. His presence had created such havoc that not for a second did it occur to me to ask him how he found out where I lived. I told Don Juan how intensely I regretted having said that I had in Hermoso. You didn't have to apologize, he assured me. Every one of us does the same thing. Once I ran away from the sorcerer's world myself, and I had to nearly die to realize my stupidity. The important issue is to arrive at the breaking point in whatever way, and that's exactly what you have done. Inner silence is becoming real for you. This is the reason I am here in front of you, talking to you. Do you see what I mean? I thought I understood what he meant. I thought that he had intuited or read the way he read things in the air, that I was at my wit's end and that he had come to bail me out. You have no time to lose, he said. You must dissolve your business enterprise within an hour, because 1 hour is all I can afford to wait. Not because I don't want to wait, but because infinity is pressing me mercilessly. Let's say that infinity is giving you 1 hour to cancel yourself out. For infinity, the only worthwhile enterprise of a warrior is freedom. Any other enterprise is fraudulent. Can you dissolve everything in 1 hour? I didn't have to assure him that I could. I knew that I had to do it. Don Juan told me that once I had succeeded in dissolving everything, he was going to wait for me at the marketplace in the town in Mexico. In my effort to think about the dissolution of my business, I overlooked what he was saying. He repeated it, and of course, I thought he was joking. How can I reach that downtown, Don Juan? Do you want me to drive to take a plane? I asked. Dissolve your business first, he commanded. Then the solution will come. But remember, I'll be waiting for you only for an hour. He left the apartment, and I feverishly endeavored to dissolve everything I had. Naturally, it took me more than an hour, but I didn't stop to consider this because once I had set the dissolution of my business in motion, its momentum carried me. It was only when I was through that the real dilemma faced me. I knew then that I had failed hopelessly. I was left with no business and no possibilities of ever reaching Don Juan. I went to my bed and sought the only solace I could think of: quietude, silence. In order to facilitate the advent of inner silence, Don Juan had taught me to sit down on my bed with my knees bent and the soles of my feet touching, the hands pushing the feet together by holding the ankles. He had given me a thick dowel that I always kept at hand whenever I went. It was cut to a 14-inch length to support the weight of my head. If I had leaned over and put the dowel on the floor, between my feet and place the other end, which is cushioned on the spot in the middle of my forehead. Every time I adopted this pose, I fell sound asleep in a matter of seconds. I must have fallen asleep with my usual faculty, for I dreamt that I was in the Mexican town where Don Juan had said he was going to meet me. I had always been intrigued by this town. The marketplace was opened 1 day a week, and the farmers who lived in the area brought their products there to be sold. What fascinated me the most about the town was the paved road that led to it. At the very distance to the town, it went over a steep hill. I had sat many times on a bench for a stand that sold cheese and had looked at the hill. I would see people who were coming into town with their donkeys and their loads, but I would see their heads first. As they kept approaching, I would see more of their bodies, until the moment they were on the very top of the hill, when I would see their entire bodies. It seemed to me always that they were emerging from the earth, either slowly or very fast, depending on their speed. In my dream, Don Juan was waiting for me by the cheese stand. I approached him. "You made it from your inner silence," he said, patting me on the back. "You did reach your breaking point. For a moment, I had begun to lose hope, but I stuck around knowing that you would make it." In that dream, we went for a stroll. I was happier than I had ever been. The dream was so vivid, so terrifyingly real, that it left me no doubts that I had resolved the problem, even if my resolving it was only a dream fantasy. Don Juan laughed, shaking his head. He had definitely read my thoughts. "You're not in a mere dream," he said, "but who am I to tell you that? You'll know it for yourself someday, that there are no dreams from inner silence, because you'll choose to know it." So I'm going to leave it there. I know it's suspense, right? I hope that you got something out of that. And I know I did. It's an incredible journey, one that a lot of people are now facing. I faced it, having worked all my life. Well, not all my life, but going to school, I think, is work as well. And I only had one break in between jobs, where 6 months I went in and did a lot of soul work, a lot of healing. And now this is my second, where I've been alone. I have people that pop in and out, but I've been in my own silence. I've been in my own world. And a lot of people are falling away from their everyday lives, trying to figure it out. And it's another reason why this book is very important for people to hear, because there's a humongous transitioning happening in and around this world. And a lot of people are falling away from the paradigm that they once knew. People are selling off their homes if they can, moving to desolate places alone. A lot of people are divorcing. A lot of people are disengaging from everyday life. And it's not because they're trying to find themselves. I already knew myself. I just needed to know my origins to understand the profoundness of the mission that I'm on. And it's large. But I hope each and every one of you has a great night. I will continue hopefully tomorrow with reading more from Don Juan, Mr. Carlos Castaneda. And I will have some Oracle readings I hope to get done tomorrow. And I'm going to pick up more on Urantia. Sending each and every one of you love and light. Remember, you're not alone. All my information will be linked down below. Please hit like if you resonated with that. Share it if other people need to hear it. This is a series, so I do a few chapters at a time. I'm hoping this world will change for the better, but it's up to us to do so and to do the work. You're tasked. Have a good night, guys. Bye.